Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Continuing on, no introduction, trying to figure out what is sensorality. Are there sequences of syllability that do not exist? We're talking about what can be a word. So do we have any sort of definitive statement, numerical, qualitative, certain letters that do not go together or do not work together? Again, we've talked about kind of like the B and the J from that, I don't know, Swedish word, like Bjork or Bjork, it's kind of like birch, I think, was what it means. The point being is are there any letters or sounds that physically cannot be sequential? Yes or no, why or why not? Italicizing written word self-identifies novelty. You're a teacher, you're a professor, you're writing a book, you're talking about subject A, you're building up, you write 5 paragraphs about subject A, maybe 5 chapters, and you get to that really poignant point that you're going to make, and you italicize it. Why do you do that? It's evident that a lot of people do it, or it's natural to do so. I don't think there's anything inherent to italicizing in general, but just because it's been solidified, because people do it, you're self-identifying novelty of fundamental ontology. Meaning you yourself are learning or realizing, and you're trying to teach it to somebody, but you are aware of how fundamental or how it applies. And so you feel the truth of it. So you're self-identifying that novelty of your learning, your realization, and then you write it down and you italicize it. But everyone knows something, you build the context, and then you reduce it down to a point. So this is what we're doing, right? All of these videos, we're building the context. Spelling a word constructs a variable, sensorality, and then context defines it. And so now we're reducing the context. And that's exactly what you do when you write a book or an essay and you get to that money shot, that really poignant sentence or that point or that single word. That is really what you're doing. Building context and reducing it down and hopefully arriving at a statement somebody else can't deny. But inevitability is a spiral downward. And what I mean is, right, people say, in common conversation, he's in a downward spiral, meaning, he's losing his life, or he's letting go, or, he's not on top of things, not being productive, whatever. Point being is, this proof is an inevitable downward spiral, right? Everything that can be proven will be proven. It just depends on how long it takes for it to get done. And so in the same way, like if you went into McDonald's when you were a kid, you put a little quarter in, and it went around the thing for charity, and if it landed on a certain spot, you got a free Happy Meal. But like that's the visual images of what this proof is doing. And then there's a fundamental minimum of that stability of 2, and so we're going to arrive today at two undefined, a fundamental dichotomistic pair. Literally just one syllable, in this case one letter switched, of 2 words that have clear bases that we understand, but aren't actually words, or yet. Again, we're expanding the logic of all of these words. But again, anything that anything that can be proven will be proven. And inevitability means it's going to happen. And then we already have this imagery of spiraling downwards, right, to the center of mass. You're not being free. You're not escaping. You're not. It's just a analogy or metaphor that we've already have. But meaning you can't get away from something that's going to happen anyway. And so that's what we're doing with this proof. So whether it takes today, tomorrow, it's going to happen, but in general, that is what you're doing with any of your writing or any of your learning. An answer is a response. Remember, we've paired ensor to answer. And so, just continuing on, but sore is tender. You have ansorality and sensorality, completing the point I just made. But sore is tender. Palpability is sensorality. What did I just say there? Palpability is sensorality. This working definition for sensorality is feeling. What is palpability? If the tension in the room is so palpable, first of all, you didn't say the dark energy in the room. You said the tension. You didn't say the potential energy. You said the tension in the room. But, right, if it's palpable, you can feel it. So palpability is feeling. Sensorality is feeling. So we're condensing down into, again, the concept of feeling. Life feels. Palpability is visceral. That was a very visceral experience. You felt it. It moved me. A slit is not a hole. It just isn't. But again, I'm just pointing out logical facts that are empirically physically true. But if you saw a slit, you'd think like a cut. If you saw a hole, you'd think a puncture. So again, just differentiating different words. Why these ones, I don't know. They just present themselves in the proof. But I would say I do know these are all like slit, right? It starts with SL, it ends in it. It is what it is. But that S comes from sensorality. So you have to pick up all of these pieces. Expansion by insertion. Right? Just take the dichotomistic pair, market and marketing. Right? If you have a market, this is like a place you can go sell stuff, and marketing, advertising to get sales. Right? What have we done? We've put that ET in the word. And so now can we view the words as bounded from the first letter to the last letter? And how would that work consistently? And so, again, thinking about like the expansion of our logic and of our words by insertion of syllability. You take a syllable from one word and you insert it into another word, but the bounds are complete, meaning it expands like radially outward like that. That I had some intuition for that. Again, trying to figure out what exactly are these different aspects, characteristics, and properties, and what proofs can we generate from the clear and proven fact that language iterates. We can pair the word going to and coming from, just like the Price is Right game, going or coming, natural opposites. But if you're going, the preposition you're going to use is to, and if you're coming, the preposition you're going to use is from. But do all prepositions pair to certain words or certain forms of words or certain this or certain that? So what kind can we establish some sort of solidified pairing of prepositions to nouns or prepositions to verbs or this or that? What other rules or identities can you think of? Sensorality is sensity. S-E-N-S-I-T-Y. And so what we've done is we've shown market and marketing. There's some sort of functionality of expansion and contraction by inserting a new syllable, when now we can then remove syllables and have it still be a complete thing. And so if we go from sensorality to sensity, all we've done is remove that syllable sorrel. And so remember, I told you that it's going to somehow to connect through sorality and it's sorrel. And so like we just removed that now. So I don't know, I do it intuitively. I'm trying to articulate it the best I can. But how does rhythm relate to viscosity? The resistance to flow. But remember, it's just the resistance. So rhythm limits viscosity. But rhythm regulates flow. We can change the verb to limits to regulate, because it regulates flow. But rhythm limits entropy. It's kind of our big, again, fundamental word that's not in ontology, rhythm, that everybody knows, and entropy, which is in fundamental ontology, that people know. Entropy, our energy content that cannot be used for work, and rhythm, the process of maximizing the efficiency of momentum when a system is undergoing change, inertial change. But rhythm limits entropy. The more rhythmic your motion is, take any physical process, try to do as efficiently as you can, you're going to form a rhythm, and that limits the amount of energy that you can't use to do work. Singles is an immediate contradiction, right? If you say the word single, and you say, like, again, we were playing around with plural and singularity, and again, logical concept of like, what does that apply? How do we formalize that in language? How does that relate to our mathematical identities? And is it physically true? Most important part. Well, they're all important, but they all have to be true. But singles, right? It's an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. You can't have plural single. It doesn't make any sense. Sensorality tingles. A sensation, a feeling is a tingle. Again, relating it to that base ing syllable, but now it's in the word, right? It's not at the end. We're soaring, sensating, but now ing has been iterated towards the front of the word. So sensorality tingles. But what matters? What is matter? Sensorality matters. When somebody says that matters, that's going to directly pair to that in any context right now today. Sensorality matters. Now in physics, what is matter? Matter is mass. Mass occupies space. So what matters? Space matters, but just like I said, we're going to connect cliches of day-to-day things that people say when they use the emphatic form of matter. That is kind of our connecting word from logic to physics for sensorality. but I just have that reduced down to simply what matters. And then I just have in parentheses, to you. What matters to you. That's a very clear statement, and that is the intuition I want you to feel right now. But you can't define a particle without defining an article. Like last episode was called articality, talking about the different limitations a and an present in front of a word, as well as the incompleteness of their categorization. Again, a unique system, not an unique system, is more logically consistent. From the sound alone, you can tell it just sounds more natural, it flows. So what's going on there? But we have to define an article, or what's the function of an article, or we've already defined that it limits. It's clear that it limits. The is the limit, is a limit, and is also a limit with an n on it. But what something there? Question marks. Does order have a limit? Right. I just want to pose that as a question, no explanation. Does order have a limit? You know what order is in physics or math. You know what a limit is in physics or math. Answer the question. And sometimes there's just power into simply just posing the question, right? Because that's what, again, we're trying to do. We're trying to derive the right question to answer what is sensorality. And once we have a declarative statement that's physically true and logically consistent, and we're going to reduce the actual literal letters, so then it will disappear. Like, it would just be like, again, you came into a room, you cleaned it all up, and you left, and you were never there. Literally. And so that's the only way you can completely reduce a proof. In the same way we don't use verbiage or the history from 65,000 million years ago isn't really that relevant to how you function today. The words used back then weren't that relevant today. In the same way, I don't know, meme might not be relevant, or just any of these acronyms or these super specific parts of language people aren't going to use in a while. And so what we have to do is we have to get logically past what sensorality means to make a declarative statement to connect it to our next axiom. And so that's what we're doing, is trying to derive the proper question. So posing the question a lot of times gives you the right answer. And so we got to be super close. Intuitively, I'm well past sensorality. I've clearly not made the exact, but it's been proven, the reduction. And so like Carl Gauss in history would say, like, you know, I think he said quality over quantity. And it's just like, I do quality and quantity every day. I mean, so it's just so much different. I'm not even trying to sound cool. I'm just trying to try to tell you how much mathematics I really do. It's an anomaly on an anomaly, and that doesn't even make any sense. But what was I gonna say? Also, just answering that question. Then I just had some little chunk from my derivation notebook that I wanted to say, because now we can connect. Again, returning to, sensorality has two parts. And for the past, 20 episodes, we've been doing sensorality with an S. But that contains sensorality with a C. And so, again, sensorality with a C is, your autonomic nervous system, the chair over there, the thing that does not have sentient control over itself. But sensorality with a C licenses. So that consistency of license, right, that's a word that people know. If you get a licensure, you get a permit to do something. If I license you my video, you can use my content to make money. But it's permission. And so the word license, sense, is spelled with a C. So clearly lie, L-I on there, is that prefix, functioning as a prefix, and sense is spelled with a C. And so we can now connect sensorality through the word licensure. And because then it gets licensure, then you get the word censure. So now we have our natural word, our axiom we're trying to connect to a natural use of the form, licensure. And so sensorality is surality, certain, censure, sensorality, ensures, insurance, EN, guarantees. What is entry? Try, entry. Again, another dichotomistic pair where it's a try to attempt, entry to enter. Clearly, it's just EN in front of TRY. Pointed that out, was interesting to me. Sorry if there's a vacuum in the background. I still don't have a studio, believe it or not. So I cannot record my stuff, the most important scientific derivation ever, with basic ability just to have the confidence I can record this stuff. But our final result today that I wanted to get to is that dichotomistic pair, and it is tensality and centality, right? Sentient, centality. Tensality, tension. So again, tensality is not defined, centality is not defined, but you're just flipping the S and the T. And again, they're sequential in the alphabet, Q, R, S, T, U, V. There's also a natural pause when you learn the English alphabet. So now you can even ask questions like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, right? The L, M, N, O. And then if you go look at different, like the Cyrillic alphabet or other alphabets, there's still chunks of syllability, of sound, in the same order. And so it's like you can compare alphabet sounds and how they're consolidating, condensing to be more efficient. But that is our final result for today. We're at the dichotomistic pair tensality and centality. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.